Yeah, get out of here.
I'm still here.
Good morning and welcome to the Viva Underground. I guess it's morning technically for us, but by the time you're listening to this, who knows? Today is September 12th, and I am Jay Lees.
And I'm Joy Apple.
And this is Joy Apple.
I think
we're
this is
really
the first
excited.
time. No, this is the first time we've done formal introductions. We're not usually this serious.
And even more formally, we have a guest today, so I'm so excited to kick us into there. Yeah. But welcome to the Viva Underground. That's really the con. So just to kind of remind everybody, we did a live stream on LinkedIn. So if you missed it, while this is still called the Viva Underground, like Viva is not just the Microsoft products, obviously, and we really want to keep the conversation around employee experience. And there's going to be so much more than the Microsoft Viva platform that's part of that conversation. And I think today, I'm really excited to have Richard Harbridge join us to talk about his experiences in Viva, in the employee experience, but specifically, well, before we bring him in, Joy and I just came back from the North American Cloud and Collaboration Summit, where I actually got to attend sessions for the first time in years at a conference. And there were a number of sessions that were really good. And I saw Richard and I had to bring him in. Joy, tell me what you presented at with North American Collaboration, blah, 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 with the summit.
Just stop trying to say it. It's NACS. Just stick with NACS. It's safer that way. Yeah, it was so great to be back at NACS. Always a great conference in Branson, Missouri, of all places. If you've never been, you need to come next year, and then either before or after, go ride roller coasters. You can't beat it. So I presented a topic, Copilot readiness for the real world. So not how to deploy Copilot, not really how to use Copilot, but how do you make sure the governance is done, and what is the governance that needs to be done to be ready to roll it out and have a successful adoption? Because if we don't prep for it, we're going to roll it out. We're going to expend time, energy, and money on the licensing, and then nobody's going to use it. Yep. And that stinks for everybody.
Yes, it does. And I did an all-day workshop on security, which I'm not going to bore anybody with. Although it was an excellent conversation with Ben Stejink, who,
Ben kept it very peppy.
If you don't currently follow Ben's podcast, Ben does a podcast with Scott Hogue called the MS Cloud IT Pro Podcast. And we took over, and it just released the other day, and it was awesome. But in today's takeover, we have a special guest, and I'm going to bring him in. Richard, thank you so much for joining us today.
A pleasure to be here.
Richard, your session, you had a couple of sessions. Tell us what you presented on. Tell us what you're doing at the conference.
And tell us who you are.
And tell us who you are. There you go.
So I'm Richard Harbridge, a Microsoft MVP, and I work with ShareGate, a company that does like Microsoft 365 migrations and Microsoft 365 governance. One of the talks was on AI for IT leaders. So it was about a lot of the tactics and strategy that people miss. So like the importance of data modernization and why that drives so much from an AI perspective, or, from a governance perspective, like there's a lot of noise. Like what are the two things that are really important and strategically different than the way we've worked before that we need to adapt to? So that was like one session, lots of, of course, me 100 plus slides and it was even some math in there. And then the other session was AI for team leaders, which is something that I'm very passionate about, because we found consistently when organizations deploy, AI, there's, different levers that lead to success. And one of the biggest ones is manager and team leader enablement. And so the more teams get saturated with AI, the more that they use it, and the more that we help them use it in new and creative ways. That includes like soft skill scenarios, people development, all those other types of patterns. That actually makes a big difference, which is, perfect, because this is a EX discussion, and that's a lot of what we find is EX is HR and IT, and often it's even perceived, if it's Microsoft Viva, it's like, oh, those are apps for HR, and IT just kind of enables them. But really, where those things sing and they make the biggest difference, just like Copilot Copilot is when, team leaders, cross-functional, smaller teams, not departments, but like, teams are using these tools effectively. So that's something that I shared a little bit of like tactical advice and examples of how to do it and why it's so important.
When you're having those conversations or presenting those type of sessions, what are the points, like particular slide that you're on or particular bullet points, where you either get the most questions or you see the people lean in or the heads tilt and they're like, wait a minute, what do you find is usually when people are like, hang on, what about this?
Yeah, there's three like very digestible, easy takeaways that anyone can just get. The first one is, when we allocate licenses for Copilot, which is a very transformative technology, it's an
Mhm.
exponential one. So when we allocate those licenses, you allocate them to a team. So you don't just give it to like the manager or a leader or like a champion. You give it to the whole team because then everyone learns together. There's lots of reasons we can
Mhm.
get into the ROI of collaboration, but collaboration is significantly different when you have AI infused activity, and so. Teams is the way to both nominate, your selections of who gets those licenses and to assign them. And there's all sorts more to talk about there, but on average, it's a 3x return on investment for other adoption methods. So you could try other techniques, but again, if your licensing or allocation or distribution strategy isn't using a team-based model at its core, you're gonna get like 3x harder return. Like it's gonna be much worse. The second scenario that I get a lot of excitement on is we're all looking for measures. We're trying to understand like how does this really change how we work? And most of us focus on individual productivity and then quality, which are really great
Mhm.
measures. And there's MIT studies and Harvard studies, which I was talking through in the session. But really, what's important is actually we see this growing awareness, both academically and then within organizations, that team-based data is both more reliable. So people underreport, right? So if you ask them like, oh, how much has like AI helped you? They're like, well, it's helped me, but like there's not really any reason for them to, tout it that it's making their life easier or whatever, because as long as they don't lose it, they don't want to point out like all the things that it's doing for them, like increased capacity, et cetera. So what ends up happening is you're seeing teams are much more honest about that. It goes back
Mhm.
to the licensing strategy, but also teams also get much higher ROI, and you measure that through a couple of different techniques. But one of the ones that you see is like lower number of like transactional meetings. So I'm saying, hey Jay, you're amazing at finding documents in SharePoint. I'm going to have a meeting with you, and you're going to basically help me, do that activity. Instead, now I'm using AI to do that activity. So that reduces the number of these interrupt meetings, which we all know are very expensive. And then it also increases the participation and the way in which people engage in these higher value meetings. So where there is actually like collaboration needs, we're finding that, AI, both, before, during, and after the meeting, is doing all sorts of things because each person in that meeting is using AI in their own way. And so, even if I'm not actively speaking, I might be like internalizing some of the things you're saying and using AI to like scaffold some next steps, or especially with like whiteboards or other types of high value collaboration scenarios, we're all using
Mhm.
AI often in that same experience. And so that's, becoming richer and richer, the use cases for active synchronous collaboration. And those things are driving significant ROI because those are the most complex issues. And
Yeah.
this fits with one of the best studies for this is MIT. They have this study basically where it's the teams that use AI, they really outperform individuals or even teams without AI when they are on, the top 10% of quality, right? So like the stuff that's highest quality or the most complex is where you
Mhm.
see, this kind of scenario I'm describing drive impact. And of course,
Mhm.
that's like the one of the most expensive aspects of our work. And
Yeah.
so the more we can crack that nut, the better. I always think of this analogy at a friend. We were just talking about this yesterday. I was at an employee experience meetup in Toronto. A bunch of different companies, and we were talking about how what we want is like the Advil, not the vitamin. And like so much employee experience or AI is like not addressing pain like Advil does. It's like, oh
Right.
no, this is good for you, right?
Yeah.
And no
Right.
one cares. Like I'm
Right.
not saying like you should of course take your vitamins, but like we want like I have a headache, deal with my headache so that I can keep, the
Fix
business
the
going.
problem.
Right.
Exactly. And
I
and
just want
that's
to fix
where
the problem.
yeah, these scenarios that I'm mentioning are like
Yeah.
perfect, and the team leaders know what they are, but like
Right.
department leads and business executives don't. So like that's the kind of lowercase p process, the people
Mhm.
processes in the business, and that's where team leaders shine. And the more agency tooling support that they have, the more they're able to use not just EX but AI and other
Yeah.
techniques and tools to address those needs.
It's interesting you mentioned reducing the breakthrough meetings where it's like, hey, I know you know about this, tap on the shoulder. I'm bad about doing that. I'm a bad offender because I'm impatient, and I can't find it. I'm done looking. I know David wrote this document. I'm going to go ask David about it. One of the examples I showed in my session was where a customer asked a question. And I was like, oh, we've had that question come up. It's pretty niche. What was the answer? What was the answer? What was the answer? So I kind of did a little looking around and then I said, what am I doing?
Just ask Copilot.
Copilot, right? So I was like, look at my one-on-one, my channel, my email messages. Help me find any reference to, right? And I gave it the information. I told it the conversations that it would likely find it in, right? I gave it a little outline. So in 5 minutes, I had my answer and I could click on the references, look at the chat, look at the support channel chat where we talked about
Yeah.
it, look at the couple of emails that I myself a year ago had sent to a customer with the answer, but it'd been a year. Come on, right? That saved me, a director in an organization, from interrupting another director in the organization.
Yeah.
And what are the odds we would have talked about a couple of other things too? Right.
You
Tell me
know,
that didn't save $30 and that recouped my Copilot license for the month.
we talk a lot about like AI unlocking, and this is a great example, right? Because, this knowledge retrieval scenario stuff is like, for like the tech people, they're like, oh, no, that's not task. We're not even doing autonomous. No, it's like that's like where the majority of the juice is, right? For like
Sure.
organizations in terms of like helping them out. But actually, what I think is interesting is, so let me tell a quick personal story. So I've run remote organizations for a long time, CTO running all these things. So in this particular organization I'm working at now in ShareGate, everything is async. And when I say async, like the culture is async by default. And so I'll get videos like all day long from people that are like them just on their, like a Loom or a Teams meeting, like whatever your asset type is. And they're just like, hey, blah, 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 I have this question. What do you think of this, et cetera? So they're pointing to things on screen. So it's way less typing. It's very contextualized, but it's a scenario where a human would have value. So like it's input like that's creative, or it's input based on, my expertise and domain knowledge or things like that. And the difference is I will respond to a piece of that. Like there's a little piece of this video and I'll say like this part of this video, I'm going to do another video back to you and here's my response. And that means way less meetings. So there's lots of ways. I'm just using this as an example, but there are organizations that have kind of cracked the code, or maybe cultural teams in organizations that are using more digital native or whatever techniques. And they're finding like these wins. What's interesting is when you take that and you combine it with AI, whatever these digital patterns are, and we have all talked about this, like just don't use email. Like what if you just used something else, right? But like if you add this digital patterning on top with AI, you start to see where AI really sings, and where actually, sometimes there is value in passing it to another user. And one of the use cases that I'm finding very fun to explore is this visual understanding that AI has. So there's times like I will, I don't know if you guys do this, I narrate my work. So this is a great technique if you're a team leader or whatever, you narrate your work, kind of David Attenborough style, and you talk about like all the things you're doing. And then at the end of it, you just have AI analyze the transcript and say like, what could I do differently? Where are opportunities for me to use whatever your AI is? So Microsoft 365 Copilot, and it'll come up with suggestions like you were talking about using Excel and doing this work in this way. Here's like some quick techniques. And actually it's how I do a lot of my learning is I'm always like, it's not even a prompt I do regularly. I just basically do these recording sessions. I name them a certain way. And then at the end of the week, I have a scheduled prompt and it goes, hey, and for this week, was there any interesting things that you see across these meetings that I had, like my little focus time sessions that I could do better or whatever, right? So everyone's got their own automation, but that's mine. And what's interesting about that is now I started to play with this idea of like, and we've all done it. When you start to record something to explain something to someone, like I have this input or feedback, a lot of times you get that aha moment yourself. You're like, oh, well, that's why it's like that. Like we think out loud and then we realize it. And I'm like, well, now I don't need to message this person at all, right? Because I figured it out.
If you talk through it.
And so like, because I think you do more reflection with AI and you do, especially async culture, you do a little bit more of that yourself. It's also reduced even more, like the number of times those interrupt or having a meeting for a meeting's sake occur. And so it's been I would say I was already really remote and obviously quite digitally minded, and now I'm in this environment where that's up to the nines, and I'm like, okay, there's still more to learn,
Yeah.
which is always just very exciting.
So Richard, this is where you started to blow my mind during your session. Is you started talking about how to use AI not to just do your work, but to improve. In this particular case, how can I improve my use of AI, or how can I improve the task I was doing in general? But then you started talking through things like, okay, at the end of a meeting, give the AI like what was the purpose of the meeting and how could I have handled this situation better, or how could I have facilitated this meeting better? Like you started getting into these use cases that I'm like, people don't even talk about that. We talk about like, oh, you're going to save time searching, like Joy said,
Yeah.
or you're going to save time creating this document. But like the idea that you can use it to better manage your team or better handle a rough situation, like you said this stuff like it was common sense, and I'm like, oh my god, people don't even think about this stuff.
It's, I think we're all learning. What's the use case that I hear the most? It's like delegation. So you say like, help me with admin, help me with productivity, right? Which is great. Like I want to be clear, that's like the vast majority where most of us are.
Totally. Yeah.
But using it as a thought partner, which I think is kind of the colloquialism, like, is something that once you start to get into it, you start to realize how many ways it could help. So like, I'll give the most basic thought partner one. If anyone who's listening to this has never done this, go create like a professional or personal journal. If it's, if it's personal, whatever your AI tool of choice is, just go create one. You can even, maybe we'll I'll send you guys like an example of a prompt for it, for the instructions for your project in ChatGPT or for Copilot notebook. But like what you're basically doing there is you're saying, I want you to be like a tough love best friend type thing and challenge my assumptions, show me my blind spots. And so what's great about that is you can just dump anything into it and it'll help you refine your understanding. Like we all have biases. We all, it's a place to vent safely and actually get improvement over time. And because it's a consistent place to vent, you can actually do things like over time. So like, what's like a top 5 things if I could work on that I should, based on all this stuff I've kind of thrown at you, right? So it's a great way to just get started in like a box scenario. But like other tactical ones that I like is, one, it's really cognitively hard to switch what you're doing, right, in the flow.
Yeah.
So, I love the start of the day, end of the day, or end of the week or whatever, like having that kind of rhythm where it's out of the normal flow and you actually are like, okay, I could reflect in theory at this moment. And so one of the ones that I like to do for most meetings is I like to know what are the differences in perspective. Because a lot of times we'll have meetings and we'll make decisions and, meetings move really fast and we know what's in the meeting. Like I don't really need AI. I mean, it's nice to have the action items and the notes and stuff. But what I really want is like my blind spots. So what I want to know is, I'm meeting with the same people often, week over week. What are those differences of perspective that come up week over week? And often, are hidden in those meetings that we just never talk about because we never have time, or that can help me be a better manager, right? To understand them better.
Yep.
So that like simple thing, what are the differences in perspective that have, happened in this meeting? And you can table it, you can do all those things. Or what are, across these X meetings, what are the differences of perspective that are more common? And then that creates new meeting opportunities, real meetings, those higher value ones where you can talk about, those hidden things that eat up a lot of time or create misassumptions or whatever. The other one I absolutely love is, I don't have the highest EQ. And as a leader, I am a high performing leader and I manage high performers. So, high performers, without getting into all the details, you want to make sure, you're not critical to them. You want to, because they're all super self-critical, right? Like a sports team. So you want to make sure like you're just talking about like what they're doing well and things like that. And so, so I'm a very supportive style. And when I look at EQ, I know that because I'm a high performer, sometimes I'll be abrupt. I'll go, go. And so I'll use AI to analyze meetings and say, what could I have done better? You just feel like a meeting's a little bit off, or you're just not, you're not in a great place that day. So I'll be like, what could I have done better EQ wise? And then what I'm trying to do is I don't have time to really analyze every meeting. I'm looking for what's like a pattern that I can put on a sticky note, put it on my monitor and just do better at. And then what amazes me is you start with like a meeting, because we all feel that like a meeting is it's closer to like an in-person experience where you're just like, I could have done that better. And like, so you get some, body language, whatever. And so then what I do is I take that and I put it into chat in emails. And what's amazing is that same text modeling, right? Where it's like, okay, this is the, seek to understand, pause, listen, acknowledge, whatever the gap is that I'm, working on. It'll be like, oh, I see that in all these chat dialogues because we're habitual, right? We're creatures of habit. And so we'll say, oh, these are other areas you could do better and give me tactical reasons and how to do it. And chat's better in some ways, or even email, because I can just reply, or I can like with Teams, I can click that little reply button and be like, and especially when it's private, I can be like, hey, I just wanted to, I know it's been like a month, and everyone knows I overthink things. I'm like, I'm really sorry about this. I'm working on this and I just wanted to whatever. And I've had times where I bring that up and I'm like, do you have time for, in our next one-on-one or our next meeting to have a little chat on this? And people, not always, maybe like I'd say 2 out of every 5 times, it would be like someone's like, yeah, that was really actually, that did bother me then, we're good or whatever. But like, I was frustrated. I'm like, oh, and because we've done this so many times with so many team members, now they do it to me, which is amazing. So they'll be like, hey, I want to have a chat with you about this, or there's a dynamic between some people in the team, and they'll bring that up. And because we have this comfort with, kind of reflecting and being open about this stuff, it's leading to some really, you can imagine like the peer review type, scenarios where we start to ingest some of these things as signals. And yeah, so it just gets more and more complex, but it starts from a really simple spot. Try a new prompt or two, and then, kind of build, your own playbook or approach.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Joy.
Do it, Jay.
I think that idea of really being able to dig into self-improvement, whether it's for work, or frankly, like I started thinking about, okay, how can I handle situations differently at home? Now I go to therapy. I meet with my therapist every other week. We talk about my kids, we talk about work, we talk about time management, we talk about my spouse. Like we have these conversations. But sometimes I just need to like brainstorm with someone. And while I could call my buddy Steve and we can BS like there's no tomorrow on stuff, like sometimes I just need to quick check something. And so even while just listening to you talk about all this, I'm like, wait, even if it's not a
You have that.
recording,
Yeah.
I could just go to Copilot and say, I had this challenge. How could I have handled it better? This is what I did. And so it doesn't matter if it's personal or business. It doesn't matter if it's you're the manager or you're working with a manager, or it's, a colleague you met at the water cooler. Like you can work through this stuff. And it's funny when I do promptathons at work a lot. So a promptathon is when you hands-on work for like 3 or 4 hours with Copilot trying to solve challenges, right? And everyone wants to solve these like grand challenges with AI, which I totally get. Like AI gives us the opportunity to solve grand challenges, but to get there, you have to solve small ones first. And the reason I'm bringing up the promptathon is because I totally lost my train of thought.
Well,
Isn't that wonderful?
it reminds me of with Copilot Gallery and stuff. There's a lot of times where you want to share a prompt, and so like you come on to these like especially thought partner style prompts, or even variations. So like we did a couple months ago when I was at a different org, we did this promptathon, and it was like a lot of leaders. There was a lot of like team leaders and other dynamic people there, because it was part of we did a promptathon and then an automation-a-thon. It was like a double header.
Nice.
And so that group, their prompts were really fascinating because like we all know Copilot can compare. I'll use an example. So there was like, compare this document to that document. If you don't know, that's like a great use case. There's a one button from OneDrive, and then you can like just type it in for other places. So their prompt, the most popular one that everyone was liking, was comparing product specs and a few other document types. So it was the same prompt that everyone kind of knew, compare, but it was compare these things and then look at, like these property, like these types of things. So it was a little bit more narrow. And that was like a hit across all these product team leaders. And so, because they were like, yeah, that's what we need to do. We all do it all the time. And of course, we those who've been in this for a while know like you're going to build a SharePoint agent, or you're going to build a knowledge agent. It'll have those like default prompts. But like for them, and that's what, of course, what happened in the automation-a-thon. But for them, that was like the most popular type of prompt. It was like prompt augments was really what they were storing. And at first, they were just saving them in Copilot for themselves. But like with Teams and team sharing, or even org sharing with Copilot Gallery, you just save them, and you can, just like your prompt book, you can now share it with a broader set of people. And so I think, to your point, a lot of what we see is like we all have aha moments with AI, but the more we can find whatever ways to make those visible and shareable to others, the faster everyone grows. And I think the biggest thing that I'm going back to the very first thing I said is when you do that across broad teams like departments, it the trust or even just the visibility shrinks in terms of applicability. But when you do that within a team context, like it resonates really fast. And then that, is like a cyclical effect, right? It's a feedback loop where then these people say, oh, I augmented it this way. And now you get more and more refined prompts. And we've all done that. You try one prompt and then you get smarter. If you've ever done this at the end of your prompt chain, you're like, how could I have prompted better, right? Like you always end it with that. And then like next time you have like a longer prompt with all this context and detail, because none of us are great at like the goal and context setting and all that stuff. And then by the third or fourth time, you got this like really laborious, like complex prompt, but it works wonders. And like I think that's what we see this chaining across team leaders.
One of the things I think to keep in mind, and I love how this conversation has gone, is to your point, we're looking for AI to help us increase revenue, be more competitive, do all these ginormous business goals. But if we leave the focus there, we are going to grind our employees to dust.
Yeah.
And we see that automations and the digital workplace, we're teetering on the brink of keeping this crown on the all-powerful productivity. So now you can do more in less time, do more, do more, do more, do more, do more. Now we're doing more 24/7.
Yeah.
So if we pivot some of those goals to this more human side, this more employee experience side, go, great, you've gotten a lot done today.
Yeah.
Pause. Now go sit down. Use the power of AI to go, here's my work stream. Here's my process. Here's what I did. Here are the conversations I had today. Here are the challenges I had today. How could I make, or I know I'm going to go sit down with the XYZ person tomorrow. Their personality and mine really isn't the same. How can I prepare? Feed it some transcripts, feed it some things. Help me to be more, I don't know even what the right word is. It's not prepared. It's kind of prepared, but more equipped maybe?
Yeah. Emotionally equipped. Sometimes we need that.
Sometimes we do. Stephanie Donahue shared with me, we recorded a thing in Vegas. She needed to convince somebody to do something.
Yeah.
And it was a challenging conversation. And she used the coach in Outlook, the Copilot coach in Outlook, to say, hey, and it was like, this person is feeling this way. Use your message to help them feel supported and give them some control over the outcome. And she said, I was like, oh my gosh, they're feeling railroaded. It's these kinds of things. It's not just do more, do more, do more.
So the way I agree with everything you just said. So the way I like to pivot that a little bit is I say, it's not, because again, if we're focusing on the individual, we can get into attribution and how KPIs and everything else works for the business, but like it's really, there's like indirect things that we all know drive business success, and then there's direct things that you can measure to those KPIs that matter for the business. And so like a KPI that is important for a lot of businesses is like increasing the number of agents per human, and we know that there's like all these risks associated with it. If you want to increase the number of agents per human, you need more champions, you need more people who are doing these things, but most importantly, you need teams. Teams own agents. We can dig into this later, but like you can have an owner as an individual in a team, but really a team is what owns and drives success of agents. And so what you're really doing is you're trying to scaffold in your organization a scaling mechanism where your teams are more and more ready to like push transformation or whatever, push things further. And that benefits from those teams being able to use all of those skills, all of those tools in an organizational context. And I think, again, it reminds me of like in EX, we kind of suffer from a lot of the same challenges because there's like a KPI, which is we want to, throughput, lots more press, in a manufacturing organization, we need to create more and ship more. But like, that's really hard to say like, oh, this person's more engaged and, they're happier and satisfaction. Like, how does that drive that? And so again, what's interesting is I think we put too much on HR and IT to figure all that out. If you just give the data to the team leader, not all of them, but some of them will really surprise you. And those that surprise you will lead the way for others. And so we know that through pulse surveys, right? We know that through Copilot Analytics, Viva Insights, where you bring that, kind of insight down to that individual. In WorkLeap, there's a lot of stuff in our EX platform where there's like onboarding and there's scenarios where you really got to give agency to the leader to like make all these decisions about like what's the onboarding sequence and how to do it and make it just really accessible. And these things, when you put them together, the more you empower, really, again, I want to be clear, like it's not always role managers, like managers with role authority. It could be like relational leads, team leaders. The more you give them that data, insights, and support, the more you're really unlocking the people velocity attribute in this AI future that we're in. And because people are so much more performant, right? We all know we get more productive, our quality increases, and it's like exponential. It just keeps going up as AI keeps getting better, and the tool sets we have for digital tools are better. But that, if it's not exponential, it's multiplicative for teams, because teams again have shared commitments, shared interest, and are we all know we're capable of more together than we are alone. So I always like. It's so tempting to like individualize, whether it's a story or a KPI. We start to think about those metrics, and I really try hard to like pivot that to a team. Maybe I'm over analyzing it, but just because that seems to be the scalable technique that seems to sustain and maintain the progress that we're looking for.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the importance too of making sure if we're piloting Copilot. I just love that phrase. To, as you said, to do it in a cohort.
Yeah.
Because especially technically, we know part of the logic behind that is because it's actioning on the graph, and the graph is paying attention to all those signals of who we work with and what we do and what we're accessing and da 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 da. So it just makes it better.
Easier for IT too, because how many assets does this cohort, like for legal compliance, like what do we need to secure? Yeah, exactly.
Yep. But don't count on IT to do your Copilot pilot, please. Ever. No, don't, because
it's not
IT has teams. IT has department. Anyways, I'm teasing, but like, we both know we're talking more about technologists leading the exponential change.
Yes. Oh man, Richard, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you bringing a softer side to the IT conversation, and really, and I think it is important that when we talk about what value our employees getting out of any tool, we start to think about like not just what value are they bringing me, right? What's the ROI? What's the dollar value that's coming to my company because of this tool? But like, how are my employees going to feel like they are getting smarter at what they want to be smarter at, getting better at what they want to get better at, getting to go home a little bit earlier and spend a little bit more time with their family, or whatever it is that inspires them. You brought up the journaling thing, and one of my colleagues, Brendan, he's starting to use Copilot notebooks, and he's loading the notebook with things like what are their KPI and role goals for the role I'm in, and then on a weekly basis he's reviewing the week and trying to use Copilot to figure out like, how did I do against those KPIs? How did I do against my goals for my career this year? And then he's using, again, every week you do that 52 times, right? Now you have this regular conversation to see how have I improved over the year at meeting the goals and expectations I have for myself. And that's not something that he was asked to do. That's something he's doing for his own betterment. He has career goals. He wants to manage people. He wants to be a leader. And he sees the notebook as a way of kind of working through that. And so by understanding like, what are my employees trying to get out of this, you're going to make, this is a weird phrase. We always use the phrase that you're going to make it sticky from an adoption perspective, but like, you're going to make them sticky with the company. They're going to want to stay because you're giving them tools to meet their personal goals.
Yeah. It's kind of like, we underestimate like the people skills in Viva, like that, or sorry, in Copilot, that new capability where it like tracks that. So like, again, what if you can make it so that they don't have to constantly be updating their skills and responsibilities, but like that could be fed in, through just looking at the meeting names and the, the documents they're generating and things like that, which is exactly what that, Copilot feature does. Or, my other big one that I always think of is, you think of transformative events. So like an M&A, a divestiture, something big happens in the org, restructures, whatever, these always happen. And of course, we got to migrate, use ShareGate for that, whatever. So you're doing migration, you're doing things like that. But one of the things that I really find interesting is, with 80% of organizations doing M&As, right, in the next 2 years. Like it's very, very common of some sort. When you're having those transformative events, that's a great opportunity for, you to shake up the way your team works a little bit, or, so you can merge other groups in, or to change things like that, to rethink what data do you have and where is that data? Could we bring that into like a place where now when you ask your, whether it's a journal assistant or even better, a team assistant, because that's again what you want to move towards, where we all have like a team that knows what our team does and even has like the brand persona of our team. So it even helps us like, how do we present ourselves? Well, all that stuff. So you get all that in a team notebook, let's say. And then what you're doing now is you just take the, data that matters and you start feeding it in, because the data is, hopefully in Microsoft 365 or connected. And then again, it just like, we're so early in this journey, and employee experience is already transforming, but like everything, we see people shifting from, in HR, we shifted from hiring and firing, right, to like performance and like how do we get more out of employees. In IT, we shifted from, enablement and infrastructure, hopefully for most of us in firefighting, to like how do I like digitally transform? How do I, scale digital skills and capabilities in the organization in a meaningful way? Comms, how do I enable better communication versus just editing and publishing? The list goes on. Everyone's transforming, and AI is accelerating that. But really, we just have to acknowledge it's not like we have an M&A or a transformative event always that triggers this. What we need to do is use those opportunities to like really get good at our playbooks. Like, how do we transform better as teams? And then just sustain that, because we're always transforming, right? So,
One of the things I've been trying to do, usually on a day when I don't have an 8 a.m. meeting, because is to sit down with Copilot. Because I know one of the things I struggle with is separating signals from noise.
Yes.
Right. Then there is so much noise these days. And I had one of those aha moments. I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and it's not a tech one. It's Diary of a CEO. Free plug. I love it. Stephen Bartlett, terrible with names.
Okay.
He brings in people from every industry, everything, and he talks to them. And he was talking to, see, terrible with names, the Shark Tank dude, the bald one.
Okay.
And I know, I can't help it. It's just how I am, Jay.
We have
He
like
was talking
AI
about
answering who these people are on the side.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. He was talking about his experience with Steve Jobs, and said that because they'd worked together many years ago, and he said that man was the best he had ever seen at separating from signals from noise.
Oh.
And his goal every week, 3 signals. Accomplish 3 things based on the 3 most important signals every week, or at least make significant progress. And I was like, oh. So I've started, I'm not consistent at it yet, because we all know AI requires building new habits and learning new skills, right?
Yep.
Consistency is one of those that's important. Sitting down with Copilot, my cup of coffee, and I put it in dictation mode, because as a dyslexic, and we need dictation in Teams because that would be magical for me, just saying. But I sit down and I talk to it. I was like, okay, let's look at the past 5 days of events on my calendar, communications in my email, chats, and let's look at the next 3 days, or just whatever feels right in the moment. What are the top 3 to 5 things that should be my signals? That's not really noise. And we kind of talk through that. And that is helping me be much more intentional in the direction my day goes, when it's not like those back-to-back meeting days. But now I'm thinking about, I should start putting that in a notebook, not just
with a
random
schedule
chats,
prompt,
right?
And then actually you don't even have to interface with that prompt. Like, have it output it, and then more interface with like what it's extracting from those days. And then that way you're one level abstracted, but it actually saves you a lot of time. Similarly,
unless I just need to talk.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah, and that's like the journal, right? Concept.
Right.
But I think one of the things that's really powerful about like the team agent, right? When you get to that team agent level, is the visibility it provides. So, individually, we're all answering questions all the time, and we're using AI to answer those questions. Let me be clear, right? Like, to your point, what was that asset? We mentioned that earlier, trying to find that, previous conversation or Q&A. But actually, once, and I think SharePoint agents are a good example of this, right? Where you have that SharePoint site and you have the Copilot agent, for knowledge retrieval, and then who knows what skills in the near future. So when you use those experiences, what we're seeing is, because telemetry is built in by design. What I mean by that is, like, everything people do with that is available if you wanted to explore it, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
what are the prompts that are failing? What are the nature of the kinds of prompts that are working? Because you want to do this anyways, just to improve your suggested prompts, right? Just to improve your instructions or things like that, as if you're working on your agents. But one of the interesting things there is, often you'll be like, oh, it's not so much that people are asking about roadmap X, it's that we don't actually build roadmap X. Like, this is a thing we just hadn't prioritized, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe we could do that, and let's see, how much that helps reduce the
Right.
noise and volume of requests to us to, like, do these interactive sessions. Of course, we all know, that is a great example. That team knows, like, immediately, that's what we should do. So they do that, and that's it. Just like one little commitment. So it's like a retro, I don't know, biweekly. They make that one change. And then you see the change in, if people are consuming, their agent, for their team, you see the
Right.
changes and shifts of behavior, where now people are getting those answers, they're getting what they need from that. And also the value of that team increases, because everyone starts to understand how to interface with them, how to interface with the output, the work that they're doing, right? Like, how does
Right.
their work help others? And
Yeah.
again, this might seem, great for that team, but when you do that across 10 teams, it doesn't need to be a lot. All of a sudden, those 10 teams, those agents are all improving. Now, again, if you're getting into, like, these more advanced scenarios and you start to think of autonomous agents, imagine how that can actually look at the way these other agents, think of the cues that they're getting, which
Mm-hmm.
prompts they answer, what, kind of the descriptions are getting improved. And all of a sudden, it can call on those agents in the right ways, or just Copilot can in general, because it does orchestration. And then we get, like, better and better results across the org. And that increases the usage of agents, it increases those things, but it never devalues the team, because the thing the team is doing is they're becoming more or less analysts. They're looking at the data for how people, again, use their work product or their outcomes, especially for shared impact, and they're figuring out ways to, like, tune that. And if it's an individual just for us using for our own team, you get the same benefit for your own team, right? So again,
Yeah.
I think agents is something that can be overwhelming for people. They're like, it's a lot, like, an agent. But, like, if it's just retrieval, and it's an agent that does retrieval, and you're like, it's not going to add any other value than helping us find the stuff we already know, just try it, because you'll be surprised at, like, the little questions and signals, your point
Yeah.
signals that you'll get, that you just
Yep.
didn't get before. And those signals won't show up in KPI meetings, they won't show up in retros, but they will show up in these agents, and then they'll become critical for those discussions in those, KPI or retro type meetings.
Well, agents are usually where I cut the conversation off, which is I do. I think if you start with simply the prompt, you start with the conversation, you start with the dictation, the chat, Joy, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you'll eventually figure out ways that, yes, I want to have this happen every single time. I want to have this happen once a week on Friday mornings or whatever. And yeah, that's where or I want to share this process with someone else. And that is where we get into the
Right.
agent stuff. But I think I'm going to use that as an opportunity to kind of cut our conversation. I'm going to say short, because I feel like we could go for another hour
Oh my
and not
goodness,
repeat a single
easily.
thing. Um,
Easily.
but Richard, this has been a blast.
Yeah.
I really I hope to see the presentation. I hope to see those materials public, maybe on LinkedIn. But I want to see more from you. As you've mentioned, you're interested in doing more, because this conversation isn't happening enough.
Yeah.
We're
No, it's
we're
not.
talking all the time about the dollar value, the ROI. Joy and I can spout very quickly for people how they'll get that $30 a month investment back. But this is so much more than that. This is how do you
It
make your
is.
people, how do you make your employees experience better? And that's really
Yes.
all we're talking
Yep.
about. And man, thank you. This has been awesome.
Thanks for having me. It's been wonderful.
Hey,
Absolutely.
Richard, how do people find you? What's your favorite way for people to reach out to
Uh,
you?
LinkedIn is by far my most popular social network for me. Like, I actually check every message, like, max maybe 2-3 days delay. So if you connect with me there, message me there, comment, message, whatever, what works best. If you want, from another contact perspective, you can always get hold of me through X, although I'm not. I look at DMs, but I don't post as much as I used to there.
Yep.
And then lastly, what I'll do is I'll share some assets with you guys. Like maybe there's a state of Microsoft 365 report that's really interesting, like M&A, like some of those trends that might power some of these discussions on why we need to prioritize this better, or Copilot scenarios. And then I'll try and grab those decks even, and maybe get a PDF or something. We can share that for this audience. But yeah, just again, don't be a stranger. I'm super friendly. I know I say that to everyone. Like, I really am. I'm super friendly, and I love to just have a chat.
We can vouch for him. He is, folks.
Yeah. 100% vouch for Richard's friendliness. All right, Richard, thank you again. Joy, pleasure as always. I don't know what we're doing next or when we're doing it, but I'm really glad we got to do today.